What makes stablecoins stable is backing them with an asset that is a trusted asset that's regulated. So, to make this work, because we've gone through a lot of turmoil and volatility around stablecoins in the last 9 months, is to regulate them and force an audit. For example, take a stablecoin, tie it to the US dollar, audit it every 30 days to make sure it's a one-for-one relationship. If treasuries are used to back that asset, make sure their duration is less than 12 months and audit that too every 30 days. That product would be a stable coin, not an asset for trading on price valuation, an asset for trading as a way of payment, a payment system. And it would be backed by the US dollar, and that would work. That would become the world's default payment system. And that's the potential, and that's why there's so much initiative right now around the Transparency Act around stablecoins. A lot of interest there.
So essentially you could burn tokens and manipulate from a Fed or from a Fed equivalent organization. Do you think that that should be a component?
You know, there's a very simple model to think about here. A payment system is based on trust. That's how it works. The only reason that the world wants to have the US dollar in times of turmoil, as we have right now, you're seeing new highs posted by the US dollar, is the trust and the faith of the currency itself. It's no different for a stable coin. You have to believe it's backed by something of value that everybody else believes in too. So, for example, the antithesis of that would be if you told me to go use the Chinese yuan digital currency for my savings or for payment system, I would pass on that. I don't trust that administration. I don't trust that currency. I don't trust the Chinese government. I have no interest in owning that. I'm just being transparent. Now, you give me the same opportunity with the US dollar, that's different. I'll take that chance because I trust it. And apparently, so does the rest of the world.
But should there be an entity that is able to maintain the stability by the amount of tokens that are, and if we're just talking Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, you're talking stable coins, right?
Take stable coins out of it, okay, we got that. But what I'm saying is, if you're trying to stabilize, in general, crypto, should there be a governing authority that we can all believe in, we can all trust in, that has the ability to manipulate, maybe that's the wrong word, the same as the Fed does, the dollar?
That's going to be pretty hard to do with a decentralized product. I mean, it's really hard to think about Bitcoin, which is a ubiquitous on-chain product, being regulated by any one government. You can provide policy, okay? Let me give you an example. The ACH transfer system between banks and the SWIFT transfer system were developed by private actors, but it's regulated in every country by the regulator, which is why you can use a SWIFT transfer. Each regulator regulates. The same could be applied to Bitcoin. What is the policy? What are the rules? What will the US say about this decentralized asset? And what will the Swiss say? And what will the UAE say? And so there's already proof in the pudding that if you can do it with something like ACH, which is a bank transfer, basically software. I mean, I keep saying this. Bitcoin is not a coin, it's software. ACH is software, SWIFT is software, Ethereum is software. You simply have to have policy in each jurisdiction that is going to allow that asset to trade. And so I don't think you can have one overlying commissioner saying, I'm doing that for the global market, because every market has its own regulator.
Okay, so because of where all this came from in this decentralized and kind of it's a level playing field for artists, musicians, and where the philosophy of Web3 versus the technology, do you think that the people who are the OGs, the originators, have been in it for a long time, ought to put forth their request for how regulation should look, how these protocols, because you have regulation, you have market-driven protocols. Email, it's not spam, being able to mark something as spam is not regulated, but it is market-driven protocol by now. So shouldn't the people who were early adopters of this be able to set forth, in any any industry, you have an organization that represents that industry. That does not exist here. So are we going to be beholden to regulation that comes down from wherever?
Well, everybody should have a voice in a deregulated asset like Bitcoin, and they do. The problem we have right now, and why Bitcoin is stuck in a rut between 19,000 and 22,000, is a very simple outcome, I'll tell you. There is no institutional capital pursuing this asset. For all the excitement about it, the truth is the sovereign and the pension wealth funds that have 62% of the world's wealth do not own a single Bitcoin, and they're not going to buy it until there's regulation. And the reason they're not going to buy it until there's regulation is they put most of their money in the S&P 500. It's the only market that can absorb $250 million in one trade without disrupting the market pricing and discovery of pricing. So they need to stay compliant. It's a very simple problem. The reason we need to resolve for regulation is that all of us have invested in Bitcoin. I believe it could be $100,000 a coin. And I believe I can be awarded a coin for $7,000 if I want to invest in Bitcoin mining. But it's never going to get there until the $1 trillion of institutional capital want to buy it. So however we get to a regulated place, because it's not good enough just to regulate in the United States. It has to be regulated in every market where there's potential buyers. A lot of work to be done here, but we've done it before in stocks, we've done it before in bonds, we've done it before in gold. It can be done with crypto too and Bitcoin.
So at what point do traditional business practices, my mortgage, my car title, when do NFTs become a staple within industry operating in the background and we don't even know it?
Right. Well, you're right about that. The utility and the use applications for NFTs is so staggeringly powerful, so fantastic a solution for authentication of assets, real estate, cars, jewelry, pens, watches, all of that. It makes so much sense. However, if the smart contracts that are built into NFTs provide some form of utility or distribution, that starts to smell like a security. And so we have to get regulation on that. If you create an NFT and all of a sudden, let's say for a watch, I know the watch industry inside out, I'd love to have an NFT for this very unique piece, of which there are only 1,500. That would be very useful for me. And the maker, in this case Rolex Tudor, would like to get a piece. Let's say they said every time it trades in the aftermarket at a higher price, they get 3% royalty. Is that a stock because it's paying a dividend? Or is that a commodity because it's technically a digital piece of paper or a contract? We need to determine that, because right now nobody will issue these things until that decision has been made. The regulator has been very specific about this. If it walks like a stock, talks like a stock, pays a dividend like a stock, it's a stock. And right now we don't have a ruling, which is why the market is just saying the NFT market has been crushed in the last year, crushed because of this problem.
We've kind of been in this wild, wild west kind of thing. There's no sheriff. Anything goes. Is regulation the sheriff, or does there need to be this community set forth, these are the rules we all ought to be playing by? Or is it just going to be the U.S. government does regulation, and because we are the U.S., the rest of the world is going to follow suit? And is it going to be driven by Apple, Facebook, the corporations saying with the government, because I'm sure that's going on right now, these are the protocols we want, and does that take away from the original concept of the level playing field that Web3 was built in, that a starving artist can compete against the corporation?
It's a great debate, and I totally get it, and here's the answer. The original founders that we all must respect in this huge initiative of decentralization, whether it's NFTs, whether it's tokens, whether it's coins, whether it's blockchain, whether it's Bitcoin, all of this innovation, this incredible innovation, this tremendous potential will remain untapped without the institutional capital that wants to buy it. And there's proof in the pudding. The frustration the market has right now, we are at new winter lows in some respects to every asset class. It's not only Bitcoin, it's NFTs, it's all kinds of tokens. They're down 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%, and they're staying down there for one singular reason. There's trillions of dollars that are not going to invest in them. And for all the excitement, I've said this countless times, until we get indexed by institutions, Bitcoin is going to stay stuck in this rut, and every other digital asset. So I say to everybody, including the founders that I have a lot of respect for, and the communities I have so much respect for, and the artists, get over it. It's time to make this thing real. It's time to bring the rules to the table that allow that spigot of capital to be turned on, and trillions of dollars come into this, and everybody that owns Bitcoin will be happy with that outcome, because that's when you get true price discovery and capital appreciation. Bitcoin, the potential of that is that it is treated as a real asset for long-term stability of asset appreciation. It's not like a stable coin. Either you believe in it or you don't. If you do, over time it appreciates in value. But the only way that's going to happen is if it has an underlying bid from an institutional buyer. Every single large asset class, like a stock or a bond or even gold, the bid is always the institution. It's not the individual. And that's never going to change. And so I think we're at the point of inflection now. I think all the players and all the constituents and all the voices in crypto realize, shit, we're in the ditch. How do we get out of this ditch? We need the money. We need the capital. We need the indexing. We need the sovereign funds. We need the pension plans. We need the whole world to say, I want to buy some Bitcoin. And they're not going to do it until it's regulated. So, I say it again, get over it.
Do you think that between COVID and, well, let me back up, because COVID is kind of a factor of this, but do you think that, I mean, everything's down except unemployment is the only thing keeping us not from a recession. Do you think because COVID caused a lot of people to use not just Web3, but other ways to hustle and not do a 9 to 5? Do you think that Web3 is kind of an extension of that and is going to keep that moving forward? Because it seems to me and a lot of other people I talk to that a big reason why unemployment is not going up is because people have found side hustles. They've found ways to get beyond the typical 9 to 5 job.
There's no question there's something awry here because we've never had a recession of full employment and a recession where the consumer stays strong quarter after quarter. And I think what happened here is we've never printed $6.7 trillion in 30 months before. We turned those printing presses on. What did you expect? Of course you're going to get inflation. Then we had another act, the Anti-Inflation Act, which was inflationary. Then we gave the students all their money back for free. That's more inflation. So we have a lot of inflation here. We have a wash of capital in the hands of consumers. And you're absolutely right. Even a grandmother that didn't know how to use her cell phone to order groceries before the pandemic, if she's still alive, it's because she figured out how to order groceries, or she would have starved to death. So everybody has digitized, and those side hustles are everywhere. And that's why people have dropped out of the producing and productive side of job creation, because they're not measured anymore by the traditional ways of measuring are they employed or not. You're right. They've got lots of side hustles, multiple side hustles, and that's digitization and work. And at the baseline infrastructure of that is the potential of blockchain, which now is going to come to the fore in the front through Web3. Web3 is about mass adoption. All the money that's going into Web3 is about solving for the wallet, solving for security, and solving for the regulator. And when that happens, you get the killer apps. And I remind people about this all the time. The internet never exploded till it had a killer app called email. That's what turned the internet into the internet, and all the other apps came afterwards. I think the killer app for Web3 is going to be stablecoins, because everybody can use those, and everybody will, because it's a cheaper, faster, more productive way to provide payment. Better than anything we've got right now. Better than anything we've got. And so that's the momentum. And one of the reasons, and I'd argue, you're seeing new 52-week lows of American banks, like JP Morgan, for example, the same guy that criticized crypto, he hit a new 52-week low this week, and he's trading at one of the lowest multiples in history of his bank, because the market senses there's disruption coming from where? Crypto. The fees are going to go down, the speed's going to go up, the productivity's going to be better, the transparency's going to be better, it's going to be global in its nature, and that's very threatening to every money center bank. And that's why, as an investor, I invest in crypto, and I also invest in money center banks, because I don't know when it's going to occur, but all that value will come out of the banking system and go over to the crypto side of the ledger. So there's two risks in investing in crypto: the risk of investing in it and the risk of not investing in it, because it will become, I believe, the 12th sector of the economy in 10 years. And all of that value it's going to create will shift into that sector away from other sectors that lost that competitive advantage, that lost the ability to charge high fees, that lost the transparency that's being provided by crypto. And if you don't see that, well, too bad.
Slightly different direction. Do you think blockchain can make a difference in this world and make a better world? Instead of seeing these poor dogs on TV and I get my $20 a month, can I buy an NFT that drills a well in Africa or some other country and then get something in return? I mean, sure, they send you this little blanket or whatever, but are NFTs going to change the way businesses and charities operate in developing nations?
Well, you're right about philanthropic momentum. It's such a tremendous potential, but again, you won't make it work until it's It's got security and it's got a wallet people can use and they trust, because there's so many scams going on right now on this. I mean, there's more scams than there are real charities in my view. And so that's got to end. And the only way that ends is you use the blockchain to authenticate all this, and you prove that these initiatives are authentic. And you can do that with a regulated platform. The whole thing with Web3, and I think we'll see it happen in the next 2 years, is they're going to pick sectors like this, clean it up, make a wallet that works, get the regulated, and then all of a sudden, real initiatives like, building housing in Africa or whatever, if I want to write a check for $100, I know with certainty it's not going to some scam artist.
Or the 80% administration fees.
But the great thing about blockchain is that's totally transparent. Yeah. You can be totally transparent. Here's the admin fee, here's the money that went there, here's when it went there, here's who it went to. All of that's there. Yeah. And it's totally transparent. I mean, this is not great for scam artists. This is going to make it really hard to be a scam guy.
So let me ask you about wallets. Is proof of stake less secure than proof of work?
That's an unknown. The argument going on there, the solution to this problem may not have been created yet. The wallets today, all of them, all the stuff I see, all suck. They all suck. Until you can make a wallet that your grandmother can receive that $1,000 you sent her, we don't have a solution. And so telling your grandmother to put in a hard key into her phone or a separate hard drive, none of that shit's going to work. Excuse my French. It's not going to work. All this attempt to make that happen, it's not going to work. It has to be really easy, and it has to be really secure, and it has to be something you can simply download on your phone, like any other app, and your grandmother has to be able to use it. The test is the grandmother test. That's the wallet test. Everything else so far sucks.
Okay, so you have Apple, you have Android. Apple tells you everything. Android, you can do whatever you want. Can you see a world in which we move towards a hybrid wallet that's semi-custodial?
It could be cloud-based, sure. I mean, there's lots of solutions. People are trying to work behind the cloud on browsers. There's all kinds of ideas. But the killer app, the killer wallet, will emerge around use case of something like payment system. It'll be like email was to the internet. If all of a sudden you told me I could have a stable coin that cost me 10 times less than any of these transfer systems like Zelle or Venmo or PayPal, I would immediately try it. If you told me it was safe, if I could download it, if I could use it. So you need the use case to drive the technology, not the technology to drive the use case. It's the other way around. And that's the problem with all these projects right now. We got a lot of problems. We got a lot of projects with no problems being solved. If you don't have an app on a chain, you're not making any money. You never will. So you've got to have reasons for people to use Solana, to use Polygon, to use whatever. And I think the big killer app is stablecoins, and I think it's going to take a new chain, something like Miston, which came out by Evan Chung out of Facebook. He was doing that for Facebook, for a global payment system. Maybe he can do it, because you have to be able to transfer and transact 1 million transactions a second. You got to be really fast. We have nothing that can do that. And it's got to be secure, and it's got to be transparent, and it's got to be regulated.
Do you think, basically you have Ethereum, Polygon, Cardano, Solana, those are the top. Do you think that these platforms are going to become more specialized towards an industry, towards a particular way of doing things? How do you think they're going to transition and kind of develop, I don't want to say branding, but develop why they're better than the other?
You're exactly right. What problem are they going to solve? That is simply the whole question. Every project I invest in now, in any blockchain project, Web3 or whatever, I always ask the founding team, what problem are you solving? And then I simply ask myself, how big a problem is that? The bigger the problem, the more I'm interested. So when you listen to Evan trying to solve for financial transactions, that's a big problem. So all of these chains, whether they're inventory management or whether authentication of NFTs, whatever it is, you've got to find your raison d'etre, your reason to exist, and the app, your killer app. You got to focus on that. You got to deliver on it. You got to prove it. You have to get it to work, and you need customers to use it. You have to acquire customers. We're at that phase now. All of these projects now face the reality they got to acquire some customers. So they're going to have to specialize. Let's say you want to be the specialized chain just for NFTs around watches. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Solve for that. You know, some of these high fashion houses are standardizing on their own chains because they want the security of a centralized, decentralized platform. There's many solutions being brought to the front and the fore, but until they get adopted, all bets are off the table.
What is Web 4?
Web 4 is the success of Web 3 times 2. And, you know, frankly, that's the metaverse, which we're not going to have for a while. I mean, I don't think we should try and solve that problem right now. Web 4 is the metaverse. That's when all of a sudden you can transact and you can advertise and you can engage in a unique physical and meta way. But that's just speculation.
Great answer. The funniest answer I got to the question, teleportation. And I just laughed. So let me ask you this. This is chaotic. Nobody really fucking knows what's going on. It's all, everybody's just trying to figure it out, right? And we're going to get to what it becomes. But what happens when AI gets in the mix?
You know, there's a tremendous amount of speculation on AI, and I think it's great, and I think there's tremendous use cases for it. But let me give you the one that we've spent hundreds of billions on and still does not work. Self-driving cars. And so, you know, for all the excitement about AI, you got to solve big use cases, and that would be the biggest one. Automated motion, automated transportation. Let's solve that one. Let's try that one. You get that? There's plenty of other things you can do. But so far, nowhere. Nobody's getting in one of those cars yet because they keep driving themselves into a wall. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.